to the East Land public meeting. All participants are not informed and listening to be recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please note that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will not proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call the June 10th meeting of the East St. Peter Township Planning Commission to order. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. This evening, we have members. I'll introduce Planning Commission Jonathan Thompson, empty seat. He's absent for this evening's meeting. We have Jansen Hurd to my left, Sarah Ryder to my right, Jason Dagan next to Sarah, Tara Hitchens, the Township Manager, Lee Obitz, and Jacob Bowen. And I will allow Tara to introduce Jacob.
Yes, Jacob Bowen joined us in May as the new Director of Planning. Jacob previously worked at Westmoreland County as a planner, at the City of Harrisburg as a planner, and has recently returned from Timor-Leste.
Yes.
As a Peace Corps assignment. It's above Australia. I had to look it up.
Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. First item of business is the approval of the May 13th, 2025 minutes. You've all received copies of those minutes in the packets. And so motion to approve the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. Second by Jason. Any conversation, discussion of those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes? Aye. Approved. So moved. Thank you. And we will move to old business. We have plan number 2023-05, a revised land development plan for Gish Furniture at 2217 Lincoln Highway East. We have a representative. You can introduce yourself. Bruce Thompson, and then we'll get into questions for the commission.
Thank you. Hi. Good evening. Chris Benarchik with RGS Associates. Here to behalf of the applicant for the redevelopment of the property here at 2217 Lincoln Highway. Some of the board members may recall this project. What I'd like to do is just give a very brief background on why we're here. We were here probably over a year ago where we filed a land development plan for the project. We actually went through the entire process, had conditional approval, and we're at a point where we're looking to record the plan. As is often the case with land development and economy with the market, things change. So before we record the plan, the applicant had a deal for a hotel in the northern part of the property, and that fell through. So that's what brings us here tonight. So rather than going through the process of recording and then doing a whole new revised plan, we made the change through the end of the process there. So essentially the original program was 120 room hotel, 12,192 square feet of retail, and 14,996 square feet of a furniture store, essentially the Gish Furniture Store, which if you're familiar with it, is just a parcel or two over to the west of this property. So we're looking to relocate that furniture store on this property, redevelop the property. As you know, it recently was demolished. Again, we were very much at the finish line looking to go into construction. But having the loss of the hotel, we redid the program, revised the plan, and have gone through the review process again. That's what brings us here tonight. So we're looking to get a recommendation on the plan, to move forward. We do not have any additional modifications or anything, so the change that you see up on the screen now reflects, in place of the hotel that will be northern portion of the property is now the Gish Furniture Stores. We slid that to the north. That furniture store size is 22,620. And then the lower of the southeast corner, the retail building is positioned in the same place it was before. It's just been tweaked a bit as they look closer at the architecture. That building is now 7,879 square feet, so slightly smaller than the original 12,000 or so square feet. And then on the southwest corner where the furniture store was originally positioned is a small coffee shop user. It's only about 531 square feet with a drive-through. So from a traffic standpoint, we have less traffic than the prior plan generated. So we have a highway occupancy permit that's being pursued, that was always pursued as part of the project. The driveway entrance for the connection to Lincoln Highway has not changed. The design is exactly the same. So we had the traffic impact study updated and provided to the township, and the HOP has been revised and done. We had NPDES approval on the project, but again, through some modifications with that, we submitted, had a few comments, and we're actually looking to submit that back to the Conservation District this week. From a sewer planning standpoint, stormwater usage, both, again, the demand is less than the original proposed plan. So that's kind of a high level summary of why we're here this evening.
Here's a letter from the Miller Associates dated May 22nd, 2025. Any issues with any of the comments made by David Miller Associates? Your applicant's willing to comply with all of the comments. Our primary concern, obviously, is subdivision land development and to some extent stormwater management. There was an earlier review letter of April 14th, 2025 that you also have to part of the package. Any other comments you wish to make? Any from the applicant? No. Any comments from the planning commission? Questions?
So Gish is gonna move the furniture store into the back.
Correct. Where the coffee shop is shown on that plan, southwest corner, that's where we originally had the furniture store because the hotel was back. They've now slid the furniture store to the north and the coffee shop is in the.
Remind me, is there plans for the old store then at this point, or is there another
The furniture store?
Yeah, is there, yeah, the retail store.
Location?
Yeah.
Okay, so close that location and this will become a new location.
Any questions from anyone in the public? So we have no one online. Right? No questions from the public. You have before you Plan 2023-05, a revised land development plan for 2217 Highway East. To accept the motion from the Planning Commission, if you choose to do so.
I'll make a motion for plan number 2023-05 that we conditionally approve or recommend conditional approval of the plan subject to compliance with the David Miller Associates letter dated May 22nd, 2025. And do we don't have a length of time.
That's good. Did you submit the revision to the Planning Commission, County Planning Department?
Originally, almost, I think, a certificate or something. Yeah.
Okay.
So it didn't take.
So I would just add subject to compliance with anything in that review letter from the planning department, county planning department.
We have a second. Final discussion on the matter before us. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Second item of business is the zoning ordinance supplemental.
So this is a discussion item for the planning commission to have regarding the farm stand zoning ordinance amendment in the agricultural, the R1, R2, I-1 and Business Park districts. This would allow more than a roadside stand because the definition of roadside stand remains in the zoning ordinance. There would be a requirement for 200 feet back from the roadway. The size of the stand is contingent upon the size of the farm and starts at 4,000 square feet and extends to 8,000 square feet, depending on farm size. There are restrictions on how much outside space can be used to display on a family farm stand. The Planning Commission can make a recommendation tonight, or this can wait until your July meeting, but the board will be setting a hearing date on Monday evening. I suspect that hearing date will be August 4th.
Tara, is there a, like a history behind this? Did someone propose it or?
There's a history behind it. So the zoning hearing board had an application for a appeal of a zoning determination. There's a violation, and that appeal led to 2 zoning hearing board meetings of extensive length, going through what all could or should be allowed on a farm stand and what sizes should be allowed. The Board of Supervisors then took it upon themselves to start a zoning amendment in the process of that appeal. And the applicant for the zoning hearing board appeal decided to halt the procedures until the amendment was determined to be acceptable to them.
Received in your packet, 2 comments by email. One related to setback and one just acknowledging the pop-up vendors and food trucks. Not permitted by the city limits. Setback remains at 200 feet from the street. We did review this briefly at a May meeting. Sarah and Jason, I don't know if you have any comments that we want to make on it. We're also comments from the county planning department. Don't know if you had an opportunity to hear or not. Planning commission members are still thinking. Any comments from the public related to the ordinance amendment? There will be a public hearing. This is really an opportunity for the planning commission to express its opinion to the supervisors.
Like I said, the planning commission doesn't have to make a recommendation tonight. It can be at your July meeting, but your July meeting is likely the last meeting to make that recommendation.
Making the recommendation this evening, or would you like more time to review?
I'll make a recommendation, just the whole, until next meeting, if we can,
I agree with.
just so I have time to review.
Yeah.
Andrew, you're
I'm with them. I won't digest on it. This impact, but future generations. I'd like to review those.
The conversation we had at the May meeting was around the setback, primarily, and then a little bit about the size. The building that could be done, and if you increase the setback, you'd also be taking more agricultural land because you'd be pushing that building back further into ag land. I think that was the gist of our conversation in May. So I'm hearing a consensus to delay any action until our July meeting, which will be on July 8th. Hearing no objections to that, we will hold a recommendation until July 8th, and we will move you to the subdivision ordinance amendment related to the park and recreation fee in lieu of providing that space on the site.
Right, so the Board of Supervisors has looked at this extensively over the last few months, and has looked at what the current ordinance has, which is using assessment value and the common level ratio. So what they would like to change is that using the fair market value based on the common level ratio, and then including discount options in there. And some of those are for providing park and rec space on the property that may not be fully open to the public, but is open to the residents of the development. In addition, there's some credits for other recreational opportunities such as trails on properties, or if there is affordable housing on the development. So they'd like to provide all of those options to developers, and we would yearly have to determine the fair market value of an acre. And that would not include tax exempt properties, and it would not include agricultural zone properties.
You wouldn't be using the assessment and common level ratio anymore,
No, the fair market value,
based on what you think the acreage is worth.
based on the data received from the Lancaster County assessment information that they have for the prior year. So it's an interesting calculation that we have to go through, but it would be the fair market value.
But it is adjusted, so properties are assessed every 8 years, sometimes more, depending on economic conditions. But the values would still be adjusted annually based on the common level ratio. So they'd use that assessed value to the current one's 2013, 2018.
18, I believe.
2018, getting ready to do another one, received those notices in the paper. So that would set the new value, but then as the years go on, it would still be adjusted value of the land.
Based on the
Fair
common.
market value, based on.
Okay, so based on the common.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this, again, you have tonight or your July meeting to make a recommendation to the board. I suspect that this will have a hearing date of July 14th, so your July meeting would be in time for that.
We also discussed this one briefly at the May meeting. There weren't any significant issues that were raised by Jonathan Janser or myself at that meeting, but as with the last ordinance amendment, we have an opportunity to wait until our July meeting. We can do both on July, or we can make a recommendation for this one to move forward and just do the other one in July.
I'm okay moving forward to that.
Yeah, if Jansen wants to make it, and we'll just follow.
I'll make a motion to recommend moving.
So the motion is to recommend moving ordinance number 2025 dash. It will be given a number at some point in time related to a park and recreation fee in lieu of providing that recreational space on the property to the supervisors for approval. Is there a second?
Okay.
We have a second from Sarah. Any further conversation? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you. We will move to new business. First item of new business is plan number 2025-03, land development plan for Stoltz Foods Woodworking at 324 Willow Road. Representation?
Yes.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is James Hegney of Commonwealth Engineers, and we prepared the land development plan. Story, Mr. Fultz, back in 2014 had done a building expansion on his previous property and went through the land development process. Recently, he acquired additional ground from Mr. King, who is to the north. He expanded that parcel, and from what I heard when I got the phone call that he proceeded to do some digging once he got his lot in on the plan approved. The township issued a CPC order, and we reached out to the township, and the township required one development plan for the expanded digging and we talked with the client and prepared the land development plan. And essentially what he's doing is a 55 by 50 foot covered roof expansion of the building. And the purpose of that covered roof expansion is to just store lumber that's going to be utilized in the manufacturing process indoors. The second thing that he did in the impervious cover area behind the shop, and that's essentially what we would call an outdoor storage area for the finished products, which are, small sheds and small, structures that eventually get trucked off site and delivered to stores. We had our one review later, and it was fairly comprehensive before we met, our meeting with you tonight. We have a second review letter that was dated May 23rd, and it was considerably cleaner. We also in that time, I believe, I think it was pretty recent. Well,
June 4th.
yeah, June 4th. And there was a couple of comments. They were pretty innocuous. They were just revising the signature block. So I'm here to bring questions you might have. Stage now where respectfully, I think we can comply with all of the items in this latest review letter. We did reach out to the township engineer. We don't really see any major issues. Well, this is minor housekeeping. And we have no problem with any of that sort of thing. We will submit the SRO and everything we need to do to finalize this land development plan. But I'm here to answer questions since you've not seen it in public.
Any questions? So every issue that's addressed in the May 23rd letter will give us. It's requested.
Sure.
Any questions from members of the panel?
I have a question for you. So is this to help clean up the property then and move a lot of the stuff that sits out front back? Or is he hoping just to add more stuff? Or is the front going to clean up from that point? Because I know we have a lot of stuff that sits out front there on Willow, like in dog houses. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Is that the plan, is to try to move it?
The front of the property is all pushed to the back. We can, certainly check up with him on that to make sure that that is what he intends to do.
Just wanted to clarify, you said it was your hope, but you haven't specifically spoken to Mr.
I have no idea. The items out front that we would prefer to be matched.
And those structures out front, is that considered impervious? So is that in the calculations that on this plan?
The calculations were for the total site coverage. So that's just under 75%.
Okay,
So we will surely comply with that, because if the structures that are sitting there, which are, kind of temporary, moving on and off the site, are not on impervious cover, then we will make sure that, the structures are on top of the impervious cover.
okay.
Everyone, I understand.
My only question was related to the dumpster. Being relocated, so it's no longer within the site.
We will make sure that dumpster is compliant. We're going to show that relocated site on the revised plans.
Any questions or comments from the public? Before us, plan number 2025-03 for Stone Woodworking at 324 Willow Road. We'll obtain a motion from the commission to recommend the plan for approval or to table it. Yeah.
I'll make a motion on plan number 2025-03, that we recommend conditional approval of this plan, subject to the, complying with David Miller Associates letter dated May 23rd, 2025, and Lancaster County Planning Department's letter dated June 4th, 24, yeah, June 4th, 2025.
So a second to that motion? Second from Jansen. Any final conversation, discussion among the members of the commission?
You want to add to your motion that all structures must be on impervious surface?
Yes, I would like to add that to my motion.
We amended the motion. Are you comfortable with the amendment?
Certainly.
So we have an amended motion adding that all items that are now along Willow Road that are exposed would be placed under cover. Any final conversation? Thank you, Tara. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All, any opposed? So moved. Thank you. Thank you. Next, under new business, we have land development plan 2025-05, land development plan for Calico Creek, 2331 Lincoln. Yourself?
I'm Anthony Peterson, with Frankfurt Design Build. We represent for Mac Engineering, who is a civil engineer on the project, and also for the client. Just presenting the project, and we'll read up on the screen. Give you guys a better idea of where it is. The old roadway and property that also shares or is shared by the Common Club that's been there for years. My client, Calico Creek, is looking to demolish all the buildings on site and build a new retail space along with associated storage for that use. One of the comments we received a letter from DMA on the 22nd. One of the comments in that was specifically related to the usage of warehouse space in our drawings. That is a misnomer. It's actually storage for the retail. So that is a comment that is going to go away. We received a rather lengthy review letter from DMA. We like meeting with the engineer, our engineer and township engineer from DMA. And we need to review, we can go through the items to make sure we're all understanding exactly what he's asking for. And we feel really confident that we're on the same page. There's a few questions about some retaining wall in the back that's bordering the property. So obviously there's a lot of work to do, cleaning up the plans to resubmit. But we are, feel that we give some the review that we had with Scott from DMA. So the space is going to be used for retail as indicated in the C3 zone, which fits well with the zone. Okay, so just simply the letter and if the board would feel that we feel that we can meet all the other requests on this letter, but it's up to the board this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. We feel we could meet all them if we would decide to do a conditional approval based on all the conditions in the letter, but.
Yeah. Anything else you want? So the May 22nd letter from David Miller Associates is what he was referring to. It is a rather lengthy letter and presents uncompleted information for the planning commission. first ask the commission members if they have any specific questions to ask you, and they may cover my questions, but I'll let them go first.
I think he answered. Please.
And I would add too that the owner is, you understand that obviously the board's decision is going to decide on his business, whether or not he's going to be able to move into the space. He would like to demolish the building, the old roadway, and it's just a bit of an eyesore of a nuisance. I know there's been some discussions in the township about all the art that's on the walls and things. We'd like to get that down as soon as possible. He'd like to wait until he gets at least a conditional approval from the board.
Ask my questions. My first question is, where is the entrance to the building? I couldn't find it on the plan that you presented. I have a sense of where it is, but I couldn't.
So the PDF that we see on the screen, the darker area, the shading makes it a little difficult to see. But it is to the left of the, so if you move should I go point to it?
Sure.
You drive in that spot. Me too.
No, the entrance to the building itself.
The entrance to the building itself is in this area here.
Okay. And then from the earlier sketch plan that we saw, you significantly changed the loading dock from where it was originally.
Mhm.
And this plan now has the loading dock providing space to, assuming for a tractor trailer to come in, turn, and back into the loading dock.
Yes, that's correct.
And then in the original sketch plan, you had more of the retail parking in the front of the building, and you've moved more of that to the rear of the building. In terms of number of spaces, you've also reduced it by about 20 spaces from 111 to 94, which I know is the number that the traffic analysis said you should have at least 94 spaces.
Yes.
My question is the safety of customers who are parking to the rear of the property to get to the front of the store if you have trucks loading and unloading.
Yes, that's a very valid point. We actually had, that was actually one of the discussion points that we had with Scott when we met with him. Scott thought would be, was agreeable with the idea of putting some striping up from the corner, the top corner of the building towards the back parking lot. There's also sidewalk going to be proposed on the sort of northern plan north. It's for.
Can you point where you're planning sidewalk?
There's sidewalk proposed right here along the building.
Okay.
Our conversation with Scott was that we're gonna paint strips like the piano key strips for walkway to that designated area. The owner, so our plan also shows on the largest trucks, 53-foot trucks. The owner stated that while we had to show that with turning radius, the majority of his trucks are going to be straight trucks. So like, they really won't stick out into the walking area.
Is that loading dock ramp sloped?
Yes, it is. There's a drain at the bottom.
So you're talking about bringing pedestrians straight across where you currently have a sidewalk on the building, not down in the middle of the ramp.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Looking at, so we are looking at
Left, yeah,
straight across there.
right there, okay.
That's correct. Yep.
And you're gonna put crossing marks, you have 6 spaces on the north side there where
Yes.
the truck turnaround is. You'll have crosswalks on the street there as well.
Scott was not, he didn't mention any concerns about that, but if the board has concerns, we can certainly place crossing marks as well there as well.
I guess I would recommend it because you always park the closest to the building as they can. So before they park in the back, they're gonna park in those 6 spaces, which means they're gonna have to cross the entrance road. And if there's no crosswalk there, cars as well as trucks don't recognize it as a crosswalk.
Certainly, yeah.
So I would recommend that you put a crosswalk at that location to the sidewalk. And then I didn't see any mention about the landscaping on Route 30 that would be consistent with the, help me out there.
The Route 30 streetscape project.
Thank you. The Route 30 streetscape plan.
You are aware of that. I should have clarified this as well. The owner of this property currently owns his existing building as land joining to this directly to the east. And he's been in conversation with the township about the streetscape project for that property as well as anticipate the streetscape. projects.
Say you will comply with the streetscape requirements instead of saying you anticipate.
New road.
Thank you. So from the commission point of view, in terms of waivers and modifications, there's a request for a waiver of preliminary plan submission granted with conditions that you submit that request in writing, which you have not yet done. The sidewalk installation action is actually postponed, recommended to be postponed by David Miller Associates, as well as information related to the traffic impact study. There's further clarification provided in a written request by the applicant. We do not have those written requests. The zoning issues are not issues that we address as a planning commission, but there are significant issues related to subdivision and land development comments. In most cases, they're asking for information. The applicant now address this requirement. And I just want to point that out. We do not have a letter from the county planning department, or do we? Did I miss it? We have one from HRD related to the sewer authority. We don't remember seeing one from the planning department. Did you submit it to the planning department?
I have to defer that question to my civil engineer. If he did, but I can't say for sure.
So, any questions, further questions from planning commission members? Any comments from the public? So your action tonight can be to table until more detailed responses are available.
Yeah, there's not enough information here. So we're gonna table this till next month. I'd like to see David Miller let him clean up a lot. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but I think waiting till next month to see everything cleaned up.
There's a motion to table this action until our July, well, until the applicant is able to address many of the conditions that are in the David Miller letter of May 22nd, 2025, at least reduce those and provide answers to those that the commission can review. Is there a second to that motion? There's a second from Jansen. I would add to that, the study from TPD is based on the sketch plan, not based on. So I would like information related to parking and that. To submit to the township. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling the action of the commission, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay. Thank you for working with David Miller and the township staff. Next item of new business is plan number 2025-09, a waiver of land development plan for Iron Eagle excavating at 709 Second Parking Station Road. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Steve Hackett. I'm with Site. The president of Iron Eagle. I'm sure you're familiar with this property. This is the former HL White Crew facility on Hartman Station Road. So if you're looking at the plan on the left-hand side, that is the Hartman Station Road, and blue is our property line. And what you're seeing we're here today to ask for an approval or a recommendation for approval of a waiver of land development to add an additional mailing address to this parcel. The township has indicated that there is record of two mailing addresses there, one for HL Whiker, which is 711, and one for Aston Black, which was 709. Iron Eagle has recently purchased the property and intends on bringing their main offices into the larger building located on the bottom left-hand side of the plan. And so per the municipality's planning code, this is considered a land development. There are no improvements proposed as part of it. Do you have any questions or any that you have to?
Steve, if you don't mind, the intent is that Eagle Excavating would be utilizing a portion of the barn, but not all of the barn. And so office space would be leased to yet another tenant. So the house, which has been converted to office space, would be leased as it has in the past. And then there'd be two users in the barn, which has not happened in the past. So it's the division of space.
Gotcha. Yes, sorry. Thanks for clarifying that, Tara.
The expectation is there's sufficient parking regardless of the use.
There's, frankly, I don't have the right.
Any questions from planning commission members?
Is there any, do you foresee, possible of dividing up 3 ways, 4 ways? Or just the current 2? In other words, is it best to do one revision or?
I think the intent, and I'll wait for him to chime in here, but the intent is that Iron Eagle would move into the remainder of the space, but they're trying to recoup some of their costs. Leasing initially, so, I know there's some, we've got some visions for how properties, we want to see property move forward and be compensated. Eventually, it will be, I think.
And a new address that would, another tenant wouldn't require a subdivision land development plan.
Into the existing building, adding another user would require them coming back before you again for at minimum waiver of land development.
Any questions from any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll look to get the motion from the commission number 2025-09, which is a waiver of land development planning requirements for Iron Eagle Excavating at current address of 797 Station Road.
I'll make a motion that we make a motion on plan number 2025-09 that we recommend approval of the waiver of land development for Iron Eagle Excavating.
Second. Second from Jason. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now we to briefing items. So briefing items are items that the staff went to the planning commission that we may see in the future. It's not really an opportunity for public discussion of those items. It's just to brief us what we may see in the future. So I will go to Kara or to Jacob.
Well, first time here. So the applicant will be coming before the board to request a zoning text amendment. The applicant Lancaster Archery Supply will be looking to add a new use, the integrated business campus. And this will provide for a more flexible space, which will include light manufacturing, retail, and also include events, competitions, which will be in their case. And this use will be permitted in the I-1, I-2, and the BP business districts. And this was initiated to facilitate the growth of the business to continue to operate in the same space. And they will also be looking to rezone some of the adjoining properties as well from R2 to I-1.
The light property that they don't have an agreement to accept the rezoning.
Yes.
Just check on that. I have one very strange question, just for the briefing part for us. I notice you're taking the line that's dividing some of the properties with the zoning line. Was there any particular reason why you weren't zoning the entire property? Or will they be subdivided at some future point to show what's clearly R2 and what's in light industrial?
It's my, if you want to go ahead, Dwight, that's fine.
I'm happy to address that, but
It's my understanding that they wish to keep the residential in the front of Old Philadelphia type existing.
A little bit more than
That's fine. No, that's a good question.
But hair is correct.
Okay. So it'll come before us at some point in time.
Likely your next meeting. Yeah. The board has not set a hearing date yet. However, that's likely to be August 18th. If that's agreeable to the petitioner and the board.
And they understand we're not approving it, we're just making a recommendation. Okay. Thank you for coming this evening. Probably have a few more questions. I mean, maybe not. Thank you. Other business, we have informal discussion. 7-3. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, as pointed out, there is tonight as a briefing item to bring it to the hope is to condense in a very short presentation everything that's been going on with this project for 20 years. So I'm joined by members of the team from Keystone, the applicant on the project. Our goal is to, again, brief introduction of why we're here, the background on the project and the concept we're looking at. We'll get into a little bit of the modifications to the plan, the concept, the architecture, the layout, and then outline the process that we see to move this all forward. So ultimately, the reason really why we're here is to complete the project. So we look back at when this project started, people want construction to end. Residents want it to end, the township wants it to end, Keystone wants it to end. So we're trying to figure out how we accomplish that. Really, it's responding to changes in the market. I mentioned that 20-year timeline. A lot has happened in the market in 20 years. We all know that. One of the things that we have found is that the market for residential living, large segment of it is they want to maximize their spaces in their homes. So the largest amount of square footage they can get reasonably, and then reduce lot sizes. People are busy. They don't want big yards. And I say that's a generalization. It doesn't mean it's everyone. But there's a large segment of the population that's driving them. So there's a demand for them. This project, from its inception, was always meant to try to attract that market with the traditional neighborhood style layout, rear-loaded alleys, connected open spaces, and compact development, trying to achieve a higher density on what is a 50-acre tract. So that's a little bit of kind of, again, why we're here. So specifically, phases 3 and 4. So if you're looking at the plan, in the center of that graphic there, you have that kind of green swath. That's the water course or stream that runs from south to north towards Route 23. Route 23 would go east to west across the top. That graphic that we're looking at as well, renderings that depicted the plan as was originally approved. And when I say originally approved, we went through the conditional use, the preliminary plan, and then we moved into phase 1A, which would be the very northwest corner along 23. And then we moved into phase 2, which would be immediately south of that, all again on the west side of the stream. And then what was shown on the east side of the stream towards the north was phase 3, towards the south was phase 4. So you can see that street layout, the units and so forth. There was a mix of residential with townhouses, with apartments, multifamily, and what we call single family estate lots, where the larger lots around the perimeter of the site, and then a commercial component along 23. So as we moved forward with construction in phases 1 and 2, time had gone by, regulations have changed, and now we're trying to implement phase 3. You may recall, you may not be aware, there was a situation with the water where we needed to have a larger supply on site. So there was a water vault, that's what's being highlighted there, right, in 23. So that's an underground concrete water vault that's essentially like you'd see an above ground storage tank, it's just below ground. To have sufficient water for the project. That was where we had a stormwater management basin, because that's the low part of the site. That coupled with the fact that stormwater requirements have changed drastically over 20 years, particularly with the newest and latest NPDES permitting, MRC design, which is the managed release concept. So trying to adapt to all those changes and the loss of the stormwater management basin, it's requiring us to reshuffle phases 3 and 4. We can't implement it as was originally approved. So again, that's what's bringing us back here today. If we can jump to the next rendering, the site plan. Yep, perfect. So that's where we're at. So We were pretty proactive, we engaged with staff, trying to get feedback on concept development, the layout, we tried to retain as much as possible. One of the changes, again, they're subtle, I think you need to look for them, but along the eastern edge of the stream now, which used to be, the street was much closer to that, well, that doesn't fly anymore with DEP. So you need to create a buffer to that area. And what we're showing is stormwater management in that area. And again, we're seeing multiple MRC facilities to manage the stormwater of that site. We'll also, as originally planned, have underground detention to supplement that at-grade basin. So the plan you're looking at there is 399 units. That's exactly the same as what was originally approved. So we're not trying to get any more units. We're just matching what was already approved. But again, it was just requiring some reconfiguration, some changing of unit type. In response to the applicant and seeing what they're seeing in the market demand, we shuffled around quantity of different types of units. Again, whether it's multifamily, single family, townhouse, all to arrive again at that plan you see there. What I'd like to do is just walk through some of the changes there. You'll see one of the things I wanted to point out, you'll see that red oval just on the west side of the stream. I wanted to draw attention to that because as we assess this project, again, we had an idea 20 years ago what this should look like. We wanted to step back and say, okay, here's our chance to make it better and be critical of the layout. We had 5 points of connection on this plan. 3 stream crossings, which we felt was a little excessive. So we kicked around the idea of, okay, can we eliminate one of the stream crossings? We know we're going to have complex permitting with this with DEP. DEP's motivation is, I'm sure you are all aware, that you have to demonstrate that you're having the least amount of impact as possible in mitigation. So we're trying to remove that stream crossing. So we'll remove a little bit of street, but we're actually just shifting that street as shown there in that oval. So what we looked at doing is, so we don't have a dead end and not cross the stream, we just showed simply a private street connection to that southern proposed street. So the street to the north, the street to the south would be in right-of-way public street. But again, so we don't have a dead end. We bring that private street down, that would be 2-way, and it would have a public easement over it. So that way, in terms of fire service, emergency services, they have the ability to go through there, as does anyone else, but it wouldn't be owned or maintained by the township. It's just really a street there to provide circulation, distribution of traffic, and not have a dead end. So we're looking for feedback on that. That's one of the things we wanted to point out. Open space wise, we're about the same. The original open space, and now I'll talk specifically on phases 3 and 4, was about 1.3 acres, and then we're essentially identical at that. Overall open space, when you combine it with what's already been planned or built or under construction with phase 2, about 5.5 acres of open space. Again, we're pretty much right at the same with the new layout. A quick rundown of the change in the mix of units. So within phases 3 and 4, we really had 89 single family homes. We're now proposing 100. We had originally 22 duplexes. In phases 3 and 4, that goes to 0. Townhouses goes from 25 to 10, and multifamily from 120 to 137. Again, that's just in response to what we're seeing with the market. You know, the townhouses just don't sell as much as the single family homes, and the duplex is essentially a 2-unit townhouse. But the single family obviously is very attractive to folks, and then the multifamily, as we all know, especially here in East Lansing Township, you're seeing a lot of grant offering multifamily, so we're trying to broaden that spectrum of affordability, housing options, and so forth. Again, full build remains at 399. Now, to look at some other things we evaluated was the plan was originally approved with 6-foot side yards. Again, it's your traditional style community, your homes are closer together, you're trying to maximum utilization of the land you're developing. We looked at what's possible looking at 5-foot side yards. And the reason for that is, again, to allow for a larger home. So essentially the lot remains the same. It's just a little bit bigger house because that's what the market's asking for. From emergency services standpoint, that meets code to have a 5-foot separation. So you have essentially 10 feet between units. So we thought, again, it's a modification. We were looking for some feedback from the planning commission. Few things I'll point out too with the layout is we looked at an opportunity to again make functional open spaces. So where we came in from this neighborhood, there were just units here before. We thought as a terminus to that roadway and the entrance into the community, it would be a great spot to have essentially a pocket park. You know, have a terminus to that roadway, And it hasn't been completely programmed out. That's one of the things we want to show you tonight is some of the programming elements that we're looking at to spread throughout the community. And we'll also talk a little bit about the architecture. I think that's it from a site planning standpoint. So one of the main reasons we're here tonight is to get your feedback on modifications it would take to implement this plan. We know that to move this forward, we're probably looking at a text amendment, going back through the conditional use process. After that, if we're successful, then it's back to land development. So we've got multiple steps here to make this happen. So you'll see that often if we're able to move this forward. But I think at some point I'd like to have Brian and Keysense team come up. He's involved with some of the architecture. If we could maybe show some examples, it's possible to show, we should have some boards up there. So that's just an example, just really examples of what we're trying to achieve with the units at the top left there. We're looking at trying to have entrance features with fencing, piers, lines, basically all along the frontage of the project across phase 1 and phases 3 and 4. And that's really to give it identity and character within the township and this community. Entrance signs, that's something I think the applicant feels is important as you enter into the community. Gathering spaces, having architectural elements, pavilions, covered areas. The image that's the second down there, and the second one to the left, was an idea perhaps for a common mailbox building where people have shelter and can go in and grab their mail. Big structures, seating, gathering areas, program spaces, whether it's just open spaces, walking trails, we're looking at walking and green, as we always had done on the original plan. Again, connected open spaces that can bring someone from phases 3 and 4 across that green to the clubhouse. If you have not seen it or been on the property, I would definitely recommend it. There's a great clubhouse now that is built and serving the residents in the community. And then passive recreation areas as well. And looking at how we can look at perimeter spaces with some mounding, landscaping, things like that. So again, those are just examples of some of the site features we want to introduce to the project, possible butterfly gardens and so forth. And if we can maybe jump to the units, over the time we want to jump and talk about architecture.
Good evening. Max Brubaker, Director of Architecture. Just did a great job introducing the project. Reiterating what he talked about, we have really good sales feedback from the first couple of phases at Devon Creek. And the units, the single family units that we were building out there were a different configuration than what we're proposing here. They were 48 feet wide, here we're 40 feet wide. And with the setbacks, they were very shallow units. So we really struggled to get the square footage into the homes that buyers wanted to sell. In turn, we're extremely slow. We had a hard time selling the units at Devon Creek. And when we look at our projects in similar areas, around Van Nuys Township, Lidditz, we don't have a problem with sales. We're selling homes that are 40-foot wide, bigger square footage, is what buyers want. And, the projects are moving along really quick. So our concern here at this next phase is we want to get to construction and complete the project as quick as possible. So we think the way to do that is to go to 40-foot product, proven sellers, that we're already selling. We know buyers want them. There's no guessing game here. So there's 40, if you look at the top state homes, they're 40-foot wide. And in order to make this project work with the overall site plan, we have to modify some of the setbacks. Chris talked about side setbacks. Front setbacks are not changing. The only thing that we're looking at doing is we currently have a 10-foot garage offset requirement from the front facade of the home as part of that ordinance. We'd like to actually bring that garage potentially flush with the unit, either have it slightly recessed or flush. We do not want to bring the garage forward. We don't want a garage dominant streetscape, but we like to either have it flush or recessed to maximize that square footage so you don't lose it in the back. And then the rear setback is a significant reduction. We're looking at going somewhere on the probably 10 foot to 20 feet, depending on where that is. Currently, we're at 35 feet. So that's probably our biggest ask of the single family. And the middle is right there is the Hollywood product. That pretty much stays the same. We're not really asking for anything different there currently. They're slightly more narrow, but pretty much the same. And then townhomes, exactly what we're building there. Then the multifamily is TBD, just a conceptual. Yeah. Oh. Pick up from out front. Retain the commercial feedback that we have received so far to maintain the component out along the main road. So we're looking at the apartments over top of them. Eventually split the buildings so we could have a little courtyard, some lighting, in between there to try to make it a nice sitting area. So yes.
Talk kind of high level about why we're changing and we're trying to adapt to this new market and where we're at. I don't know if there's any immediate questions you have about what's been shared so far. If not, I can go into just some notes I had here on essentially I just tried to summarize, okay, what type of relief or modifications are we looking at compared to the original plan to try to move forward? If there's any initial questions.
So when I look at a development like this, I like to see the opportunity to move up. And you're basically eliminating that. You're going from apartments to single family.
In terms of density?
No, not density, in terms of number of units. So you said you went from townhomes from how many to how many? You went to 0 on the townhomes?
On duplexes.
On duplexes.
Duplexes, there were 22 duplexes in phases 3 and 4 previously, and that goes to 0.
Okay.
And then single family goes from 89 to 100, so an increase of 11. Townhouses goes from 25 to 10, so a decrease of 15. And then multifamily goes from 120 to 137, so an increase of 17. And really,
Those are the two I was just commenting. For me, I like to see somebody be able to move to the apartment, and from the apartment, be able to stay in the neighborhood and move to a townhome or move to a duplex and then buy a single family.
But there is another step there, smaller single family.
true. And that is true. Yeah, so it's a great point. So in terms of single family, yeah, you have the, we'll call the estate units around the perimeter, the larger single family lots.
Yeah.
And then you have a smaller single family home. That's essentially a detached townhouse almost. If you think about it, it's narrower, but it's a rear load. So you have the garage in the back, alley access. So you do have that, offering, again, a broad spectrum of affordability in this type of unit. And really nothing to say that, I mean, in phase 1, you have, there were 4 duplexes, obviously they're built. And then phase 2, there were 20 duplexes. They're still part of that plan.
Yes.
So in terms of resale, if someone wants to go from an apartment, you say in the community, they could get a townhouse or a duplex in any of the other phases as well.
I will add another comment. A lot of the feedback that we got, our sales model, buyers wanted first floor owner suites. A lot of buyers wanted first floor owner suites, move down buyers. And we just couldn't do that on the square footage. So if you actually look at that middle row on the far right, that's our latest Livingston model. And that's been a big seller for us here recently. So buyers are coming in. So we can't get a first floor owner suite. We had a very small one that we offered, but it wasn't good layout. Just very restrictive. So that was one component we're trying to tackle.
So my comment comes from our housing study.
Sure. And there you go.
Yeah, I understand. You have to sell what you build. But the township also has to look at providing for what it needs in terms of housing supply. So that's where my comment comes from.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's so many challenges with pricing. So you have to, in order to make it attractive, you need to really spread that supply. It's not there here.
Yeah.
So it's the game.
I understand the challenge. Sarah?
I would say I would definitely like to see more open space, first of all. Second of all, I definitely have some concerns about this new access way that's circled in red. Because it seems to me that it's going to be pushing traffic eventually out to Hornig, and that traffic's going to go to 23, and that intersection at 23 and Hornig is very dangerous. So I definitely have concerns about trying to push more traffic onto Hornig there. Because you think that's what that would do, correct? Because more people would access out that way.
I mean, I probably would have some people doing that. I'm definitely not a traffic engineer. We would for sure have our traffic engineer look at the distribution. My gut reaction is if someone is leaving the neighborhood, and if I'm following you right, you're concerned that someone's gonna come this way and then come out and go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, some people might do that. I think maybe these folks here, maybe a few folks in here. I feel like the natural tendency is if I'm wanting to go to 23, I'm just going to go north through the community, but speculation really at this point, but it's a point well taken. We can evaluate that with the traffic engineer.
And was there ever discussion, I was not involved in this plan ever before, but was there ever discussion about putting a light there at,
Yes, there was. I was not involved with this plan at that point either.
okay, because there needs to be a light there. My personal opinion, but.
Beat the numbers.
Hmm.
You may not meet the numbers.
Right, and that's a challenge, exactly. I mean, you guys probably know that, you know, you can desire a traffic light, but unless PennDOT says it needs to be one, we can't do it.
And it's just based on like how much traffic is going, gonna be.
Existing traffic plus combined proposed traffic.
Generally feel like if we're eliminating a lot of these, reducing significantly a lot of these setbacks, there's not large setbacks to begin with. And now it's, even though that's not open space, but it's creating even less green space in the development from what you're looking at. Because there was at least a buffer here of backyards that is basically eliminated. And I have not reviewed this plan like in detail. It's just my overall comment. And the original plan, was that all commercial buildings there on 23? They didn't have residential above?
Don't believe it.
They did not, they were commercial.
Just straight commercial. One of the concepts we looked at is actually eliminating the commercial altogether because, again, I've been in planning for over 20 years. The desire is always to try to think about the mom and pop shop, pizza shop, the hair salon. It's just so difficult to make it succeed. I always give the example, I worked on a project in Warwick Township where we started out with a lot of commercial on Newport Road, some lids. And the developer was very patient, the township was patient. Easily a decade went by success. So we actually converted the commercial that was always planned into condo housing because I think everyone being vacant, open corner. So if we could make it part of the community, we certainly would try. When we engaged with staff, we talked about, out of the gate, we were thinking maybe we just go residential here. Township expressed the feeling that, hey, you know what? Commercial component was always part of this project. Let's try to make it happen. So in talking with the applicant, we said, sure, I mean, we're not opposed to it. We'll hear what the township has to say when the project will be successful. So then we reintroduced the commercial component and said, well, let's at least try to, make a dual purpose by putting the residential involved. So that's what we're showing right now.
Proposing there would be similar to what you see up at Worthington. You're familiar with that. Where developers and salt and pepper. Thanks, try numbers. Be similar. But we would not be opposed to limiting. We would not be opposed to eliminating the commercial.
I was involved in Florent Hills development. That commercial space is still vacant, and that's on 230. I mean, it is challenging for that little bit of square footage. You have to find the right tenant.
I mean, I think having a commercial here is definitely a benefit, especially there's not a ton of commercial in this area and there are a ton of units here that I feel like and a lot of development around that I feel like if you get a good tenant in there, like it's going to be successful. And I think the area needs it.
So this is not for you, this is for Sarah. Is there a way to connect So if you have commercial there, I think it would be more successful if it was connected to Freeze and Frizz and to the gas station and restaurant and store. So if there was something in the back that could connect those, that people don't have to go out on the 23 to come back into a different commercial space.
I think that we have two issues there. One is the sewer line. And the second, I believe there's a grade issue.
But I think if there's a walkway or something.
It was the walkway that people could leave their car parked and walk over. I think access is always an issue there, that they've got to come off of 23 just for 2 or 3 stores, as opposed to being able to park someplace and hit ice cream, restaurant, store, stores. Yeah, it's just something to think about. Yeah, don't defeat the reason.
The Gibraltar in there, that's what you should get.
Any other comments from?
Maybe we'll, if I can just walk through again what we identified as complete from the application that we inserted. Really take the temperature of the planning commission. The process, that's what we're trying to proactive. So we mentioned about the 5-foot side yard that would be going 6 to 5. We did talk about rear yards at 10 as a setback. So the home may be further in from that, so you would have that additional green space, but potentially you could have larger too, and patios. So that goes back to this idea of trying to put on a lot what the market wants, and make it something that's going to sell. I did look just for some research, and I mentioned to staff that although it's a completely different zone, but the village zone in the township ordinance does allow for a 5-foot side yard and 10-foot rear yard. But again, completely different zone. It's more just to answer the question. And sometimes we've gotten that like, hey, do we have that anywhere in our ordinance? We looked at probably doing some type of like screening or privacy, screening along those edges where they're in close proximity to other units. Ryan mentioned the garage setback. We looked at that. So you have, per the ordinance, a build to line, which is between 10 and 20 feet. So that front of the build could float anywhere from 10 feet from the right of way to 20 feet from the right of way. So we know we can pull it forward. And then the trick was, how do we work the architecture where you have the garage and it doesn't eat too much into your livable space? Yeah, it's more for Ryan to figure out than me from the architecture standpoint. So that's why we're looking at, well, I think some of the examples in the imagery was maybe they have porches across the front and then you have the porch go across and it's in line with the garage versus that 10-foot setback. So that's some of the things we were exploring on the units. One of the items too, in the ordinance, there was written that you could not have more than 12 units per apartment building. So that ordinance. So that's our plan that we're showing you tonight. We have some units or some buildings we're estimating 22 units, some buildings we're estimating 24. The highest we estimated was 28 units per building. So again, that would require some relief because the bonuses we can't. When engaging with staff, they talked about, well, hey, could you consider going to vertical? We threw some caution at that, I think, because we felt that when the ordinance says you have a max of 3 stories, again, if we're talking modifications, maybe that's one for consideration. But we were concerned about the feel. What does that feel like in this particular community? If we were maybe closer on the edge of the city, 4 stories no problem. Vale, again, very vast open area, so 4 stories blend right in. Here it's a little more intimate. I don't know if that's the place for it, but again, it's just some dialogue that was shared with the township. Unit mix, that's one of the things in the ordinance we flagged as well. So the ordinance outlined that you cannot have a unit mix less than 10% of your total and not more than 40. In our case, we would have that. We'd have duplexes. When you look at the overall project, you'd have duplexes at 6%. So 4% under that, what was declared as the minimum. And then maximum was 40. At full build, implementing the entire plan, you'd be at 52% for multifamily. So, and then lastly was lot coverages. We're looking at exploring that. With a planned community, I mentioned Warwick Township, we did the Traditions of America up there in Warwick Township. Rather than like a unit by unit basis for stormwater management, that was actually designed and planned for the whole, in that case, I think it was 60 acres. before the second phase, that was 60 acres. And stormwater management was done more of what you call it, it's like a regional type situation where you just make sure before that drainage leaves your property that you've managed it appropriately. So we're looking at that with Devon Creek as well. We know we're going to have to go through the conservation district, the DEP with the NPDES permitting. That's essentially how they're looking at. They're not looking at a lot by lot basis. They're making sure you're controlling stormwater before you leave your property. So we were saying when in combination with the open spaces and all the lots, that we would look at it from a kind of project-wide basis. That's not dissimilar to how it was done originally, but a little bit in that originally there was an occasion on the plan about some individual lots exceeded the lot coverage for that particular type, whether it was single family or townhouse, particularly townhouses, because you have such a small lot. But then it was made up when you covered it over the old. So.
Would you give each lot some number? So for instance, someone on phase one now wants to put in a patio. So how would you accommodate all of that? Ensuring in the future that's. Right.
Yeah, there's, I guess, two approaches. One could be an HOA could restrict that, prevent that from happening through like an architectural committee or so forth. The other option is we could look at for each unit type, what is the average lot size, and basically saying everything within the setback, maybe that's considered impervious, so it gives them a little bit of fluff. So as long as they're within that, I'll call it building envelope, that stormwater would be designed to accommodate that as full impervious. That's one way to do it as well. It's conservative. I don't know if we would take that approach and primarily before we without getting into the numbers, because sometimes that's too conservative and your stormwater facilities end up being gigantic. So we want to be careful there. It's a delicate dance, but those are two options that you have. So that's kind of a quick summary of the project. Again, wanting to bring it to see what's transpired with conversations with staff and concept planning. And I lost count of how many concepts we've done to date, but we wanted to obviously work with staff on feedback. Feedback. Well, here.
Size of the parking lots for the apartment units?
2 spaces per unit.
2 per unit.
And that was something we kicked around too. I'm glad you brought that up because here again, we keep saying here's our opportunity to try to make this the best community we can make it. We thought, well, again, that maybe too generous. On other projects I've been involved in, your parking requirement drops based on the type of unit you have. So if we had all 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, well, we're probably going to need those 2 parking spaces per unit. But you guys probably know that if there are studios or a lot of 1 bedrooms, maybe there's a 1.75 or 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. That in turn reduces the amount of impervious. That in turn increases the amount of green space, as it's commented on earlier. And it also really necessary, rather leave it as more active or passive open space.
And that's why I raised it. I was thinking more of Sarah's comment about more green space. Do you have an idea of what your mix of unit sizes are going to be for the apartments?
In terms of bedrooms?
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay. Encourage at least a couple 2 bedrooms.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we try to do market studies and, follow what the market's looking for.
I know in the city, there were a lot of efficiency in 1 bedrooms that were built, and they're actually having challenges leasing those because people are looking for 2 bedrooms.
Yes.
So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
With a fair amount of 2 bedrooms around the township.
Yeah.
Single parent household, they want their own bedroom.
I guess I would have a concern about getting rid of, reducing the parking requirements because I've driven in this neighborhood and it's so tight, driving around. So the more people that don't have parking spaces are parking along the street, right? And it's, yeah.
So your street widths are a little bit more narrow than the other phases.
425, and then we have bump outs for on-street parking.
So it's more narrow in this than the new proposed space than the old space?
No, we're not in the street width
No.
that were always originally planned.
you can see parking, on-street parking available for the little pocket parks.
Pocket park? We can look at that. Sure.
I'm just,
No, I think what we're going to encourage, clearly, at least for the residents in the community, is walkability.
yeah,
Getting over to that clubhouse, because it has a swimming pool, or just, sitting around, walking around the neighborhood. But certainly we recognize you have to accommodate the automobile.
I think you saw those pocket parks as being basically for bookable for private parties, that type of thing, or if it was just simply.
We talked about event spaces, like maybe having some type of open air structure where through the HOA, maybe they're organizing, events, small gatherings, or something like a band or something.
I would just say, if that is a possibility, as long as they're on-street parking, you should be fine, but,
We do talk about the park right next to the townhomes, the pink townhome building. That would potentially be a good spot for some type of mail there, kiosk, so you drive in there and have a place to park.
Yeah.
Grab your mail, and then that would also perhaps, be a spot where food trucks can show up, do a weekend event or something.
Are there any like playgrounds planned? Or is there?
Well, you should ask. Martin's. Heavily involved.
You spoken to ABI, and we're going to be using for playground by the clubhouse very soon. So that'll be on. I think phase 3, and so yeah, I would say that we want more amenities like that. What Chris was saying as well, increasing phase 2, and we're going to take but even connecting some of them, we have 8 purple, multifamily buildings right now. We were able to connect those. They're piecing them all in to build more green spaces. So that's another thing that I think we're like to consider is rather than having 12 unit, say 3-floor garden style apartments, we could glue those together, make 24 units instead, and have a bigger park next to it. That's more desirable because it just gives that sense of natural relief in a same garden type community.
Any comments for them to consider? Get enough from us tonight?
Very helpful. I'm hearing I definitely desire for another triple office.
Okay. So remind me again, what's the requirement right now for the rear yard setback? 35, you said?
Well, 35 is what they viewed the overall site was a perimeter setback.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking to reduce that as well. Again, we're trying to work with the loss of space because of the stormwater management regulations, because of the loss of the stormwater basin with the water vault. We're trying to do that. Yes. As far as
What was that, 35 to 25? Is that what you're looking for?
you're looking anywhere from 10 to 20 going to the so in the ODI for a single family detached rear yard, single and semi-detached is 18 feet per rear yard. Townhouse is 18. Oh, they're all 18 actually. Now that I run down the list.
So in the original concept, your multifamily were 2-story buildings?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just looking at the number of that you had, and now you've got fewer buildings, but more units.
Big building grew in size. And I mean, architecture hasn't been refined, about to be there, but keep that from time.
Any other comments for them?
I have one more question, sorry. Is there like a walking connection into the school?
I think that was part of the original plan. Because up here. Right here, so we retained what was always shown in the roof.
That green path, is that what that is, that green
That's
dark
all.
green?
That's just a water course.
Okay, but the white right there
Yep.
is
So
the
that's-
walking path. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
Easy.
But there's no way to drive to the school.
Not on the plan.
You have to go. Okay.
What is Cottage Homes, what is demographics that you see using buying them?
It's a mixed demographic. That is a model home that we did introduce the first one last year and that's been popular. So we would check the box that one people show it. Like, it's a model out there. But it's next.
I'm just curious, I'm just thinking about the senior community. Some can't afford retirement homes, that type of thing, but they would like us to downsize. And if you have a single step or two steps up into the floor plan. Works well for them. If you have 8 steps up, depending on the design, that doesn't work for them, but
We sacrificed the challenging lot for a moment. The rest of the community certainly doesn't have the steps in the picture.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we good, gentlemen?
Yeah, you're good. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nancy moved, is there a
Second that motion.
Jason second, all those in favor? You can ask if discussion. So moved. Thank you.